Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Center for Early Childhood Education and Development, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to the distinguished panelists for the inaugural session. I think we've had an incredible morning. We are all charged up. I would like to begin by extending our heartfelt gratitude to the Deputy Chief Minister of NCT Delhi, Mr. Manish Sisodia, for taking the time to be with us during the inaugural session and for his very motivating words. Thank you very much for sharing all of your anecdotes, very powerful anecdotes, and for helping us to understand the journey you have been through to come to the conclusion as to why we need to focus on early childhood education. I think you beautifully described, and my Hindi is limited, but I think I understood you correctly. I think you beautifully described a child, that when a child is born, a child is naturally curious, truthful, and also naturally seeks justice. And so it's actually we as society and as schools, as its educators, that we are failing to provide the necessary ground for the child to grow. He also reminded us about the harm that we cause to young children. Textbook and notebook ka gulam bana dete hain. We make children a slave of textbooks and notebooks. And he reminded us of the need to develop scientific activities, engaging children through play. I would then like to thank Mr. Louis George Arsenal, the country representative for UNICEF. We are very grateful for emphasizing and also helping us understand the significance of the early years, for your strong advocacy that although right now we have a conducive environment for early childhood education, that you reminded us that we need to continue working on extending it further. And you also quoted a lot of evidence, especially you reminded us that, even before children reach the third grade, majority, that is 60% of them, drop out. So that tells a lot about how we are doing. Professor Jerry Berman, we are very, very grateful to you for being with us today and for consolidating the evidence or the science behind the practice, and for helping us think about how we bridge the gap between science and policy. I think it was just, your talk was just packed with information. You talked about the importance of focusing on the birth to 3, an age group that is close to my heart and often gets left out of many dialogues. The life course approach, and also the cost of inaction. And you also kind of discussed the pathways to scale up and the various case studies, the country case studies that have been done. I think you've also at the end summarized the various recommendations that have come up from the Lancet series. So we will definitely kind of keep that in mind going forward. And Professor Menon, we are always grateful, and it's always to have you around for your encouraging words. Also, thank you so much for reminding us about the work of Paulo Freire and helping us think about the inequalities in our society, and the critical role that teachers can play in bringing quality education And also we need to develop teacher education programs that can help to develop the person and the professional, as he rightly pointed out. So I think as a community we've got a lot of challenge on our hands, and I'm both excited and a little bit intimidated, I have to say, with all of the challenges posed by the panelists. Last but not the least, I promised Sunita that I would not thank her. But I think my vote of thanks would be incomplete without mentioning the incredible amount of work she's done in pulling together the concept note, in writing about the concept of the school readiness, which is a very problematic concept in itself, but also helping us to think about it from the perspective of the child, from the family, and also from the community. Thank you very, very much. I think we are off to a great start, and I would like to welcome all of you to this conference, and I guess we will move to have tea, right? Yes? Okay. So I think we will have tea after this. Thank you.
I request everybody to please settle down. We are about to begin with the first session. Did you have tea?
Yes, it was very energizing.
But my tea was more energizing than yours. Do you know how?
How?
Because one of our colleagues, Sandeep, just couldn't stop talking about this video.
Video? What video?
Yeah, so CECED aims to provide a single window approach to ECED by serving as a hub for documentation, knowledge, creation, and theory building through longitudinal, multidisciplinary, and multi-critic research. CECED acts as a technical resource for promotion of quality-related capacity building for policymakers, professionals, practitioners, parents, and community. Our communication team has prepared a short film on Delhi Speaks on School Readiness, in which the team has asked the population of Delhi about what knowledge to do they have about school readiness.
Hello everyone. As you must have already guessed, we are at the heart of the nation, New Delhi, the political and the administrative capital of India. And we are here to know the people's opinion about a lesser known but a very critical subject called school readiness. What is school readiness? Let's take a quick look at it.
School readiness is the goodness of fit between the child and the environment that supports and promotes optimal development. In other words, school readiness is a product of the interaction between the child and the range of environmental and cultural experiences that maximize the development outcomes for children.
Another recent study by CECED, Ambedkar University, Delhi, indicates that most of the 5-year-olds who go to school are not ready, especially in cognitive and language competencies. Let's see what people of Delhi have to say about school readiness.
So if somehow parents could imbibe certain characteristics, certain traits in the person, in the child between this age gap, then it will definitely help the child in the future also.
You find all these tests ridiculous. 5 year is supposed to go through color batao, ye batao, wo batao. What if I don't know colors? I mean, doesn't really help. I mean, ठीक है, cognitively मुझे नहीं आता. And isn't that what school is for? 5 साल के बच्चे को स्कूल जाने से पहले क्या-क्या तैयारी होनी चाहिए?
सभी बच्चों को 2-2.5 साल के बच्चों को ABCD वगैरह ये सब आ जाते हैं, तो मेरे हिसाब से उसको नर्सरी प्ले या फिर नर्सरी वगैरह तैयारी करके जानी चाहिए। बच्चा सुबह उठ नहीं पाता जल्दी, ठीक है नहीं, स्कूल छोड़ने जाना पड़ता है।
Education means that you are ready to life. They have to improve the experience. They have to face the training. हम वो किताब पढ़ना होता अभी जिनसे कुछ नहीं होता।
ऑस्ट्रेलिया और अमेरिका वहाँ पे क्या रहता है कि जैसे बच्चे को पहले प्री स्कूल क्लासेस दी जाती हैं कि उसको बैठना कैसे है, कैसे बिहेव करना है, खाना कैसे खाना है। हमारे यहाँ पे नहीं है, जब प्ले स्कूल में जाता है बच्चा उसके बाद 1 साल या 6 months 7 months वहाँ रहता है, फिर नर्सरी में डाल देते हैं, नर्सरी में डाल देते हैं। बट बेसिक एजुकेशन उसको वहाँ पे दी जानी चाहिए कि कैसे खाना है, कैसे बैठना है, वॉशरूम जाना है।
सबसे पहले तो उसे खेलना आना चाहिए, क्योंकि पढ़ाने के नाम पर हम लोग बचपन पर ही चीज मार देते हैं। उसको शरीर से हम अनुशासित रहना सिखाते हैं, क्योंकि बच्चा अनुशासन में रह ही नहीं सकता है। तो आपको सबसे पहले ये चैलेंज फेस करना होता है कि कैसे एक अस्थिर बच्चे को आप पढ़ाएंगे। उसके हिसाब से अभी कुछ नहीं है हमारे यहाँ। थोड़ा बहुत रविन्द्रनाथ ठाकुर ने सोचा था, लेकिन उसको कोई और कैरी नहीं कर पाया। अब उदाहरण के लिए मान लीजिए संस्कृत में तो यही था कि 7 साल की उम्र में ब्रह्मचर्य आश्रम शुरू होता था। एडवांस भी बोलते हैं कि 7 साल की उम्र से एजुकेशन शुरू होनी चाहिए बच्चे की। तो मेरा तो मानना है कि 5 साल की उम्र से कुछ नहीं होना चाहिए।
Children are very young, that's when their personalities and their basic development is done. So I feel that the moral values are to be set, and that's a time when a child should be carefree and enjoying life instead of focusing on memorizing things and studying. And that all comes once you join school. Nothing really is required other than your core values when you join.
Schools don't prepare you for society. They don't prepare you for like emotional, psychological difficulties that you have. And only a certain variety of human beings actually excel in the system. So I feel it's not about a 5-year-old and being ready. It's about what kind of 5-year-old it is. Because certain kind of 5-year-olds are ready for the particular kind of system that we have. But there are so many other 5-year-olds whose ways of learning are very different. And they are being stupid enough to go to school. Even though actually the reason for that is probably because they learn through different means.
Wow, well done, communication team. Now I know what Sandeep was talking about. For our first session, Are Children Ready? Our specific focus will be on linking learning levels with school readiness. The objective of this session is to emphasize the role of school readiness below the age of 5 based on the evidence in determining the learning levels in primary grades, therefore the importance of quality preschool education. We welcome our chair, Dr. Rukmani Banerjee, our discussant, Dr. Euphrates, Mr. Y. Srikant from NCRT, Ms. Aprajita Bhargav Chaudhary from CECED, Mr. Ajit Mohanty, Ms. Priti Pava from Pratham.
Our chair for this session, Dr. Rukmani Banerjee, is the CEO of Pratham Education Foundation. She has extensive experience in program implementation and research in rural and urban areas. She loves telling and writing stories for young children. I request Dr. Rukmani Banerjee to introduce the speakers for the session, please.
I think it's very hard to have a serious discussion after such a nice film. But the great idea to have a little movie like this to really initiate conversations of this type. We have a very distinguished panel here, starting with Dr. Shrikant, who heads the big surveys of achievement which have been going on in India for a long time from NCRT. Professor Ajit Mohanty is perhaps definitely India's, but perhaps even broader than that, expert on multilingual education, has spent a lifetime on studying issues of language and how to navigate language among children. And I think that the department that he was involved in is perhaps the premier department in India, definitely, but perhaps elsewhere as well, who have really spent time not just on multilingual issues, but also what implications that has on children, which I think are important. Discussant for the panel, Euphrates, is with UNICEF, perhaps recently arrived in India?
8 months.
8 months, okay. So 9 months would have been the cutoff. So she's in 8 months. And 2 young colleagues, Aparajita from Ambedkar University, who will speak about the longitudinal, very interesting longitudinal study that they're doing. And my own colleague Smriti, who I have no idea what she's going to talk about, but she has a background in nutrition, so I'm sure she will bring that into this. Now, we've been given a time limit, because I suppose you want everybody to have lunch on time. And my role is to make people stop talking. So if we want to get everybody in and some questions from all of you, so I think we'll have to restrict speakers to 15 minutes each, and then give Euphrates maybe 10 minutes. And then hopefully we'll still have some time for questions. But I know in case we don't have too much time for questions, everybody is here for the rest of the day, so they will catch you at lunchtime, as well. Just to set off the session, I agree with a lot of what was been said at the previous session, and I was reminded of when my son, many years ago, started going to school. And clearly we were not prepared, because for the first 1 month he cried and I cried, and he stopped crying before me. And then one day when we came home, he said to me, kids are supposed to cry, moms are not supposed to cry. Can you please practice not crying when you drop me off at school? So I think this whole idea of preparedness is for everyone. It's not just for the kid, it's for everybody around the kid, and certainly I think a lot of people have mentioned for the school as well. And there are many trends in India that we see, the inequality that various people have mentioned. Our office in Safdarjung Enclave, a few years ago, every building around us became a hotel. This was when the Commonwealth Games were going to happen. And now those hotels are all turning into these very fancy, probably preschools. I wanted to go and look at them because we are surrounded by these schools. But then when I heard what the fees were to enroll a 2.5-year-old, if you take the fees and you divide it by the weight of the child, every kilo is like a really expensive thing in these very high-priced preschools. And I hope that people who are paying that are getting their value for weight for each child that is sent there. But at the same time, if you look at more broad-ranging data, I'm referring to the ASER data, which is usually known for reading and math, but we do collect information across the country, and I've done so for the last 10 years, on also the 3 to 5 age group. And there you find that in many, many states, children are going to school far before 6, far before the law says, and that even in rural areas, the increase in private school going is beginning at an earlier and earlier age. So I think this question of school readiness is not just about children being ready to go to school and schools being ready to come to them. I think the very conception of this school and how early children are going to school is a matter of great concern. If you're in a private school, I think more or less you cannot enter private school in first standard. You have to have gone to various LKGs and UKGs before that. So by the time you reach first standard, the government school child who may or may not have come from an Anganwadi and the private school child, there is a distinct and marked difference in age and also in whatever kinds of exposure they have received. It's not necessary that the exposure they've received in private schools is, particularly of great value. But the universalization of elementary education in India, I think, has also meant that many, many parents believe that let's get our children into some kind of education earlier than later. And that earlier almost seems like it's getting, into I mean, we have in the USR data of 2014, very high proportion of even 3-year-olds are in some kind of school. So it's a question of, I think, great importance all round, and for more dimensions than perhaps have been mentioned. But I will turn over now to our distinguished panelists. Professor Srikanth, first.